Champ, 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 champ.
Perfect,
Champ.
perfect,
Champ, champ.
I was gonna rip his heart out. I'm the best ever.
Champ.
I'm the most brutal and vicious
Champ.
and most ruthless champion
Champ.
there's ever been. There's no one to
Champ.
stop me. Lynx,
Champ.
conqueror. No, I'm
Champ.
Alexander. He's no Alexander.
Champ.
I'm the best ever. There's
Champ.
never been anybody as ruthless.
Champ.
I'm Sonny Liston. I'm Jack
Champ.
Dempsey. There's no one like me. I'm
Champ.
from Nairclaw. There's no one that
Champ.
can match me.
My name is Stan McCAULEY. Some people call me J Stan, others call me Stan.
Okay.
I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was raised just outside of Philadelphia in a town called Hilltown, which is in Bucks County, which is the next county over. Philadelphia is a city, but it's also Philadelphia County. So right next to Philadelphia County is Bucks County, Montgomery County, so Bucks County. But Philadelphia is such a magnet and has such a presence that everything around Philly is Philly, except for Camden, of course. You know, but outside of that, everything is Philadelphia. So we say I grew up in Philly, so to speak.
Okay.
I think it was one of those typical households, quote unquote, more probably like a Cosby household, you know. My mom and dad were pretty good to do, and it was just me and my sister, my mother and my father, and pretty typical. We didn't do church every Sunday or anything like that. We probably did church on the holidays, you know, Easter Sunday, Christmas. That'd be about basically it. But you know, my sister and I were pretty self-sufficient, you know, to 2 kids, you know, kind of raise each other. But that was at a time when you walked to school in kindergarten. So I mean, I walked to school in kindergarten by myself, and then I came home for lunch and went back to school and came home. So kids back then were a little bit more independent than they are now. We were latchkey kids, so you know, we all had a key. And you know, as I got older, not in kindergarten, but as we got older, we like 5th grade, 4th grade, we had keys. Come home, let yourself in the house, went about your little business, play outside, things like that. So two-parent family, average in that sense. Best memories. I guess playing with friends more than anything. This may sound like an odd memory. I used to I got tore up for it, but I would take $1 out of my dad's wallet. Now this is, you know, 1966, 1967. So I don't know what $1 was worth back then, but I would take $1 out of my dad's wallet every morning, and I would buy my friends at school candy. I'd buy them ice cream. The Good Humor truck would come. The chocolate eclairs and the strawberry shortcakes was 25 cents. And so, you know, if you could get a 25-cent ice cream, you were like, ooh, you know, you had a whole quarter you could spend. So I would buy ice cream, soft pretzels, real big in Philly, for my friends. And one day, one of my best friends at the time, Curtis Wright, his mother was doing laundry and he had all this change in his pocket. So she asked him, you know, Curtis, where'd you get all this money? He said he got it from Stanley. I said, Stanley who? Stanley McCAULEY. Curtis, stop lying. He almost got in trouble because his mother thought he was lying. So she called my mother. Fast forward, I got tore up. I got the spanking of a lifetime. That's actually, believe it or not, one of my favorite memories, and it may be why I'm so easily to conform to the rules, because I got tore up, and after that I kind of backed off when taking stuff that didn't belong to me. It's you know, growing up, I really didn't have that many challenges. You know, we were pretty self-sufficient and pretty independent, as I mentioned. Probably a challenge that I was going through but didn't realize it. I went to a school outside of the Philadelphia school district, Penridge School District. And so I was the only minority, not just black kid, but the only minority in my graduating class of high school of 25. I mean, of 425 students. So probably, I guess one of the challenges was, you know, working out in my own head or in my own mind, you know, not going to the prom or being involved in all those kinds of things, because I was obviously different than the rest of the kids, and how you process that difference is interesting. Maybe that's one reason why, you know, I'm kind of accepting of people as to no matter who they are, because, you know, I guess you want to be accepted by people no matter who you are. So I'd say that's probably my biggest challenge in adapting to being like your own best friend, or my sister and I. We pretty much stay to ourselves, and as I think back on it, maybe that's part of that reason.
Okay.
Well, growing up, I went to school for aviation maintenance to become an aircraft mechanic. My dad was an aircraft mechanic. He ran a whole airline maintenance department. Airline at the time was called Altair. But I always wanted to be an administrator. I wanted to be a hospital administrator, an airport administrator, or a hotel administrator. I wanted to run a big airport like LAX or Philadelphia International or O'Hare, or run a big time hospital. My mom was a doctor, so I wanted to be a hospital administrator or a hotel administrator, something big like the Hilton or the Waldorf. Just the way all these institutions work and the mechanisms, and I used to build these little models of big mansions out of boxes and things like that, and they had all these little departments. So it's kind of interesting that my love of administration and running things is still very much with me in that, my current endeavor in wanting to like run a city, if you will. Well, I moved to Hartford, Connecticut to work at Pratt & Whitney. Kid from Philly. My dad was the director of maintenance for Altair Airlines. And I needed to figure out where I was going to go work after getting out of aviation maintenance school. I could go to Detroit and work for an airline, but it gets cold in Detroit, and I'm not working in the cold on the engine, in the cold, it's just too cold. Dallas, I thought would be kind of nice, but Dallas is hot and humid. I could work in Philadelphia for my dad, who I love dearly, but I couldn't even imagine working for him because he fired some guy because he couldn't come in on the weekend. So my dad says, well, then I don't need you. And so I couldn't even fathom working for my dad after that. And so my other option was Hartford. So I applied to Pratt & Whitney because I had come to Pratt & Whitney on a tour when I was in aviation maintenance school, and I loved the city. I was 19, I was 18. 18? I think I was 18 years, 17 or 18. And we came for a tour of Pratt & Whitney. There were several other plants that we went to look at, but one of them was Pratt. And I was young. You know, most of the guys in our class were ex-GIs. They were like 30 years old, 35, career-changing type stuff. And there was 3 of us that were like kids. There were 17, 18, and everyone else were like adults. So they kind of put their arms around us, you know, take care of the young guys kind of a thing. And I fell in love with Hartford. So I sent in an application to Pratt, and then they asked me to come in and interview. So I flew up here, had the interview with Pratt & Whitney, and like 2 weeks later, they called and said, you got the job if you want it. So I moved to Hartford, and I've been here ever since. And Hartford is, you know, number 4 or 5 of the greatest things that ever happened to me.
Okay.
Oh, I picked up the camera. You know, I got involved in video because when I was at Pratt & Whitney, after 8.5 years, I got a calling to do ministry. So I quit Pratt & Whitney to do full-time ministry. And it was around that time that I had discovered Hartford Public Access Television. And when I left to do full-time ministry, I was doing my television program, which was called Light Source Victory Television. And I thought to myself, you know what? There must be a way that I could tell my gospel stories through video. And so they have a series of tracks called Chick Tracks. You can still get them. At the time, you could get 25 Chick Tracks for $2.25. And they were like little pamphlets. They were like little cartoons. You open the pamphlet up, there'd be 2 panels on each page. And so these pages were like a little mini comic book. So I wrote to the Chick Track people and asked them, could I turn their little comic books into storylines or movies? They told me yes. So as I started to like work on the script, if you will, I said, well, why should I be turning their stuff into movies? Well, maybe I could do my own. So I started to do my own stories and turn them into things and doing videos, and that was the beginning. And so it all started with me wanting to spread the gospel and using the tools that were available at the time, which was video cameras. Video cameras have come a long way these days. They got the nice small compact cameras like the one you're using, and then of course we have the telephones. But at that time, the videotape was 20 minutes. That was it. It was 20 minutes long. The battery lasts for 20 minutes. The battery was bigger than the camera you're holding, and it had a porta-pack where the tape went. The camera was separate. There was a big cord that went from the camera to the porta-pack, and at the public access station, you could sign it out. You needed a crew of like 2 or 3 people to go out with you with the camera, because there was a lot of stuff you had to lug around. You needed a lot of light if you were inside. You had to get a lighting kit, and we used to make movies with this. And then came this really cool device called the camcorder, and so you had this VHS tape, 220 lines of resolution. You couldn't tell us we wasn't making movies, and so that's how it all started. Well, it's very important for there to be urban media, and I think equally, if not more important, in my opinion, is black urban media, because black folks don't have a voice. Someone else is always telling the world what they've observed about black people, how black people think. They've studied black people, they know black people. But black folks don't really have their own voice, and that's reflected in the lack of there being urban radio, urban television. But now with the internet, you have the capacity to create content and disseminate content all over the world. And that reality can't be overstated, understated. It's so critically important. And there needs to be all kinds. Entertainment, news, opinion, investigative journalism, someone to do a biography on our communities, the diversity of our communities, the depths of the richness of our ideas and thoughts within our community, and that can only be done through urban media. Without urban media, there's no one to tell our story. There's no one to champion our voice. So whatever can be done to help support urban media is something that should be done. I would encourage anybody that may be watching this to, if you know someone that's doing urban media, when you see them, give them $10, give them $5. If you see somebody that has a YouTube channel that's doing urban media, donate money to them. The capacity to do so is available on YouTube, it's available through Vimeo and all these other kinds of things, PayPal. You really need to support them. It's the lack of support that kills urban media the most, because people don't want to advertise. They want to receive the information, but they're not willing to invest in the people who create the information. All right? Most of the people who are creating your information do it out of a love and out of passion. They donate their time, their energy, their creative efforts, their intellectual capacity, their intellectual creativity. They donate to that. They would be happy to break even. All right? If they can make money as well and do it for a living, everyone would benefit. So I could go on and on for hours in terms of why that's important. You know, whether it's a church ministry that has a message on the air, whether it's a nonprofit that's telling its message, whether it's corporations telling its message. Now, all this stuff comes out in urban media, and without urban media, we don't have a voice. Someone else has captured our voice. They have shackled our voice and are telling you what they observe about us. And there's a vast difference between hearing somebody tell our story and we telling the story ourselves. I'll say one other thing. When you see a person, when you see a thing, what do you see it as? For instance, when you see a cow, do you see a cow or do you see beef? You know, when you see black folks, do you see someone dangerous or do you see someone on the rise with their capacity to become the CEO of the MDC or something like that? Or do you see someone who's in your way? That perspective changes the story. Because a lot of times you'll hear about the unfortunate, timely demise of an individual, and that person is a victim of their lifestyle, as opposed to that person had a son, a daughter, he had been at wit's end, he tried everything he could, couldn't find a job, no one would give him a break, so he went out and started, hustling on the street because he knew he could make some money. And then in a competitive war for control of the street, he got shot. See, that's a whole different story than, well, what do you expect? They black folk. See the difference? So when you tell a story, you set the context. You set how the story is framed. Because as quietly as it is kept, everybody who is a victim of their lifestyle, their story is told differently if their person reporting the story happens to be like them.
Right.
The Greater Hartford African-American Alliance is it's an unincorporated alliance of individuals, organizations, some companies, people that are gathered together to further the interests of African Americans in the Greater Hartford area and black people in general. Currently, I am the president of the Greater Hartford African American Alliance. There have been a lot of presidents before me. I'm the current president, And my role is really to be the voice of the alliance. A lot of people think, well, you know, you get to come up with the direction, the trajectory, the vision, and all that kind of stuff for the alliance. And that's not quite the way it works. I can have a vision, which I would refer to as the president's vision, which gives me a little bit of separation from the alliance as an individual. But the president articulates the will of the membership. So anytime you see me talking on behalf of the alliance, it's not me talking, it's the alliance. So the alliance votes on things. And once the vote is cast, then it's my job to articulate that voice. We have many members. Our members cross the gamut. Everyone in the alliance is not walking lockstep with one another. There are people that don't get along with one another in the alliance. There are people who have different agendas, people who have different interests, but they come together in an effort to share information so that we have a clearinghouse and a common place to talk about issues, to talk about problems, whether they be spiritual problems, whether they be health problems, community problems, political problems, whatever the problems are that face our community as we're made aware of these problems through our membership or people who visit. We try to come up with solutions. And when we come up with a solution that there is consensus around, where everyone can say, well, you know, this is something that we think is important, someone will make a motion to cause an action. Once the motion is made, it's seconded, they take a vote, there's some discussion, the vote, and then it is so. Then we have a lot of different tools that we can use to move our agenda along in terms of how we might measure the success of that initiative, whether it's our capacity to get in touch with the press, whether it's a resolution that the alliance might make, whether it's letter writing, whether it's going to sit down and talk to somebody in a position of representation. And I use the word representation as opposed to a position of power, because I don't believe that elected officials have power. I believe that the people they represent have power. So we go to them and we talk to those individuals. That's really my role at the Greater Hartford African American Alliance. Well, you know, being a people's representative or an elected official as opposed to a politician, I originally got into politics in 2006, moving into 2007. The mayor at that time was the Honorable Eddie Perez, and there had been a lot of controversy over some construction stuff around his house, and you know, there was a lot being said as to whether or not he should remain in office, and there were a couple of grand juries, and eventually he resigned, and Pedro Segarra became mayor of Hartford. Well, I was a big critic of what was going on with his administration at the time. And it occurred to me that, you know, rather than to sit on the sidelines talking about what's wrong and what someone's doing, what are you doing to offer an alternative? And that's when I got involved. I decided to run for mayor. I've been recording community meetings for decades. I've been attending community meetings. And it became abundantly clear that the people were hurting, the people were crying out, the people were speaking, but no one was listening to them. It was as though they were birds flying in the air, and I guess they're good to look at, but no one pays them any attention. And I decided to do something about it. Well, I didn't win, but the question was posed to me, well, you're not going to win, but when you lose, what are you going to do? Because then it will be determined whether you're really serious about this. So when I didn't win in 2007, I just kept going. I kept campaigning. I campaigned for 4 years. And I ran again in 2011. I lost in 2011. Lost in 2011 to Pedro Sagara. And in 2015, Luke Bronin ran against Pedro, and I decided to sit that one out. My hope was that, you know, another candidate would run, maybe somebody like Eric Coleman or Doug McCAULEY or something along that line. And I remember Dennis House asking me, why aren't you going to run? You know, Hartford needs a black candidate. And I says, well, you know, hopefully someone else will run. No one did. In fact, they all supported Mayor Bronin. He ran. I was disappointed with how he worked in the city. And so then I decided to run in 2019. And that was the third time I ran. So in my sense, I've yet to win. I've never lost a race. I just haven't won a race. To me, Hartford's been losing. They're losing in 2007, they lost in 2011, they lost in 2015, 2019. Hopefully this time they don't lose. Because after every loss, everyone is complaining, oh my goodness, I wish we'd have done differently. Oh, I wish we'd have voted differently. Oh, well, they bamboozled us. At some point, I think Hartford will wake up. Hopefully it's this time. If not, I'll be here for the next one. Because Hartford is worth it, you know. It doesn't take much of a sacrifice to advocate for the people you love. So that's why I keep running.
Okay.
I think the single most challenging thing we face as a people, at least in Hartford, in terms of pulling us together, is an unwillingness to have a community agenda where we know what we want in terms of dreams, aspirations, desires, goals that are going to benefit us as a group. And I think that until we do that, there's nothing for us to rally around. So we become individuals that are connected to other individuals that work for individual interests, but not the interests of the whole. And unfortunately, in a town like Hartford that is impacted by such great poverty, people are often in survival mode. And because they're in survival mode, they're just trying to make ends meet. And so, you know, when you're deciding whether or not you're going to pay your cable bill, or whether you're going to pay your phone bill, or whether you're going to buy medication, you're in survival mode. So political things become bottom on the list when they really should be at the top of the list, because every decision in the city of Hartford, which is a capital city, is a political decision. Whose trash gets picked up first? A political decision. Whether a tax abatement is given to a corporation that could be paying for something in a classroom. Those are political decisions. Whether or not there's a stadium, that's a political decision. Whether your street gets plowed first or last is a political decision. Whether the lunch contract goes out to some outside group that packages your lunch and brings it in cellophane and serves it to you, or whether the lunch is made fresh in the school. Those are political decisions. So people say, you know, I don't have time for politics, I don't get involved in politics, and because you don't get involved in politics, you have no voice. There's no one sitting at the table. So you get whatever's left over. So imagine if you went to a Thanksgiving dinner and there's 25 people there and they asked you what you wanted and you didn't know. They go around the table and everybody eats, and then finally you get to choose from whatever is left over. There's no pumpkin pie, there's no sweet potato pie, there's no cornbread, there's nothing. Just the leftovers. And you can help yourself to the leftovers. Everything else is gone. And that's where we kind of find ourselves. So until our leaders have a willingness to put themselves second to the needs of the people that they move forward, we will always be in that situation. So we have to come together. We have to be willing to have the hard conversations. We have to be willing to, take off the gloves, throw punches. I mean that metaphorically, not literally, and fight. A fight for the things you think are important is never easy, but you have to have it. And then you can come to, once again, consensus. Everybody can agree to disagree on this, but everybody can agree to agree on that. So we all rally together to champion this. So whether it's a position of mayor, whether it's people on the city council, you have a voice and you have to fight for the things you want. If you are silent, you will only get what's left over. And so all too often, we as a people have been waiting for someone else to make the decision for us, and then we hope the decision they made is good for us. All right, and that comes from what I refer to as a plantation mentality. Hartford, in my opinion, I've said this many times before, has a plantation governance model. And so, people don't say nothing. Silence is a political weapon. So, you be quiet, stay in your lane, and then you won't jeopardize what you have. If you speak out too loud, you get punished, and then that punishment is real, because they'll cut your funding. And in a city like Hartford, as poor as it is, where people are in survival mode, there are a lot of nonprofits that are serving those needs. Well, those nonprofits need to be funded. But if you speak up too loudly about particular situations, the political ramification is your funding gets cut. You see, they could make you whole where your organization is fully funded for 5 years at a time. But if they did that, they wouldn't have the hold on you and control of you. So as I like to tell people, we don't need to pick cotton because we are the cotton. You see, when you become the cotton, then you become the revenue generator for everybody. So if you think your nonprofits get money, the money they get isn't even a rounding, interest accounting rounding error compared to the money that was, that came for which they broke off a piece to give you. Oftentimes people will wonder, aren't you afraid of being in that position where, you're going to be making key decisions that might impact other people's finances, with, institutional racism, with prejudice, with bigotry being what it is. And if you are in certain circles today, it's institutionalized and it's pervasive. So, aren't you afraid? And I'm not the slightest bit fearful. I believe that, when you walk by faith, not by sight, that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. But to that degree, I have very, very capable people around me. Security is very, very something we take very seriously. And I'll simply suggest that, personal security, I never feel vulnerable or unsafe when I'm out doing the things that I do. Having said that, my wife and I and my 2 daughters are all willing to take a bullet. I mean, these are the conversations we have before I decide I'm going to run. And so taking a bullet isn't a problem. Taking a bullet has never been a problem. The only concern I have is who's behind me when I fall. You see what I'm saying? So someone else has to come and take up the charge. I don't mind taking a bullet. Sooner or later, everybody got to go. If you can choose your time and choose what you're doing that brings about that time, more power to you. That's where our headspace is. So we're not intimidated, we're not afraid, we're not scared. We're not afraid of people who are, envious or jealous, or people, the whole barrel of crabs type thing. None of those things deter us. I think that, in fact, I think that what our people need, particularly black males, is to see other black males standing in the gap saying, we move forward, and to be fearless about it. Because if people see that, before long they start to believe, well, you know what? If he could do it, I could do it. And as long as you don't cut a deal, you don't owe anybody anything. See, the problem comes many times when people start cutting deals. If you cut a deal, then you own the deal. You don't backtrack on the deal. Backtracking on the deal brings about consequences that sometimes people don't like. But if you don't cut a deal, there is no deal. All right? So don't compromise your community for a deal. All right? Stand strong in the gap and stand for something. There will always be people who are against you. There will always be people who are for you. The ones that are for you should be for you because you're not perpetrating a fraud. Be the real deal when people are standing behind you, and then you'll have an army of supporters. And you'll be surprised. That army of supporters will come from all sectors of the community. And quite frankly, white folks are actually looking for black folks to stand up. What do you all want? That's a legitimate question. This is what we want. And now we have a starting point. But a lot of times our leaders say, well, I don't want to put a burden on you. Whatever you can give us, we'll be fine. If you just get some new basketball nets on the court, that'll be fine. We're not asking for basketball nets. We want an equal share. There's not robbery in that. I think that, if we're handing out resources should be handed out equally. The city should not prosper at the expense of the North End. The South End should not prosper. The West End shouldn't prosper at the expense of the North End. The North End should not prosper at the expense of the West End or downtown. So there's no reason why everyone can't prosper together. Hartford's too small to have that attitude. And so I think, if you have governance that is honest, in which some might suggest folk don't want honest government. That's because they're getting something on the backside. But, if people really want honest government that's accountable, everyone benefits. Everybody benefits. Everyone. So I think that me being black, running for, semi-high office in Connecticut, here in the cities, in the capital city, folk can get over the fact that I'm black.
Nobody has to make room. You got to earn everything you get. You know what I mean? Nobody's just gonna stamp you a legend and you're not doing anything that's legendary.
One of the things that people may want to consider is like, why would you vote for me for mayor? I think that I offer you an opportunity to have a voice. Your voice will be the voice that I amplify. In all my years of covering Hartford, going to meetings, I have found that every issue that Hartford has, every problem that Hartford has, the solution is in the mouth and the minds of Hartford people. The problem I find with our elected representatives is they're not interested in helping you. They're interested in promoting and moving themselves forward. You all have all of the solutions. You have all of the answers. What you need is elected representation that will listen to you and make your dreams and aspirations become history. I don't care who you are in Hartford. I don't care what your ethnicity is. I don't care what your sexual preference is. It doesn't matter. We're all independent thinkers and we all need a voice. I offer myself to be that voice. Vote for Stan. Yeah, no, I don't need to see it. I trust you.
All right, appreciate that.
Amen. Absolutely. This is all about the people. If the people can't have a voice, then there's no sense in doing this. All right, Champ.
All right, Stan, man. Take it easy.
All right, God bless you.
Yes, sir.
First, let me do this. I want to give a shout out to Champ and his show, Chatting with Champ. Anytime you get a chance to watch it, do it. I don't care who he's talking to. It's a serious conversation that you don't want to miss.